Welcome to Whisper ASMR. Today, we're going to be sanding and polishing a couple little pieces that I've been playing with here. These are little rounds cut out of a very large branch from a tree in the yard I grew up in. Put a little too much heat on it, but I took the opportunity to take the splitting part and make use of it. This one, I just took some acrylic paint and filled in the gaps here. Had to do it a few times because the paint tends to shrink, but I've gotten it to a certain level of smooth. I'm going to take it a little bit farther for y'all here. Next, this one I've had for a little bit. It had that same cracking, but smaller and more throughout. I'd like to add a little bit more shaping to the edge. Take some lower grid sandpaper on that. And then I'm going to polish it back up so it's a nice mirror finish. Overall, in this video I'm going to try something a little different. Starting with soft-spoken, as I'm doing now, and slowly sliding into whisper as the video progresses. I think that this is going to be best for getting some sleep, and I hope this video helps you. Alright, before we get started, I'm going to go ahead and get some chai steeping. As you can tell, it's a little bit later in the day now. Turns out these ring lights that I'm blinding myself with right now, turns out they pretty good for making a good headache too. See? Now I almost burned my tongue right there, and I've done that move many times. Alright, well, while that steeps, one more thing. Classic sugar cube. Perfect. Try to do my best to secure this little metal Bembia straw so that it wouldn't clank around. It's amazing how well these mics can pick up sound. They're a little hypersensitive sometimes. Alright, I got a few different types of sandpaper generally want to move from the smaller to the larger. So I think the largest I have here is 2500 grit. And the lowest is 280. I've already kind of taken no, I only went 280. Taking anything lower would be a little much for this one. To be honest, I think I might be past that at this point. Let's go ahead. We're going to start at 400. 400 grit. And like I said, it's just used a wood burn stencil out of our vermiculite material and inlaid it with some acrylic paint. It was a lot more messy before I did a little bit of work to it. Take off, the top layers, and it leaves the stuff in the indentions. Makes for a pretty easy inlay. One thing that people do a little bit wrong with sandpaper is pushing in too hard. There might be times when you need a tad bit more pressure, but for the most part, you want the grit, the surface of the paper to do the job for you. Especially when you get into the higher numbers and you get into wet sanding, when you add water to it. That's when you get into the level of polish. Cleaning it off every so often. Keep it just keeps the sandpaper clear of any excess residue that it doesn't need necessarily. I'm gonna go around the edges here and kind of smooth it out, round it out. You kind of go back and forth, or you could fold it so that it's not creased, but it's just wrapping around the edge of that. That will also work. I kind of go in between both. If you go like this for too long, eventually it will kind of sharpen up the top part. If you go like that too long, or not the top part, but it will sharpen up to that angle. If you go like that, it will sharpen up to the other angle. And then you can kind of cut it by going straight at the 45. Generally, I do it kind of like that, going back and forth. And the last move I'll do to smooth out that edge is what I was talking about, where you fold it around that. realizing you might not be able to see it very well. Hope it's coming out alright on the footage. It's interesting how it makes a different noise depending on which part of the wood it is. Probably just the angle. It's also interesting because when you hit it at that, there's a lot more like resonance going through the piece. Alright, so we'll move on to a lighter grit here. That one was 400. Let's go ahead and jump up to 8. Different points too. You ever think of something funny and awkwardly laugh when you're not supposed to? I know what that feels like. Sounds like Little Miss Noodles is getting a little antsy being stuck in the room. This video has gone a little bit longer than I expected, so unfortunately I don't think I'm going to be able to sand up the second piece. I'm sure there'll be an opportunity in the future to do it. As you can see, I'm kind of going in between all three positions. Side, 45. In this case, vertical. Let's start to smooth out a good bit. It's definitely a lot cleaner now. Definitely. Okay. Let's go ahead and graduate $10. You can get that at any place like Lowe's or anything of that nature. Hardware department store. And that will keep it sealed up and good for as long as you want it. Just realized I'm not wearing my chain. Shoot. If it magically appears on me in the next shot, it was always there. Depending on if you're in a hurry or not, sanding can be therapeutic or tedious. It just depends. It's just so nice when you get to it, closer to a finished product, and it's shiny. And you can see the pattern even as the wood curls over on the side. You can still see all the patterns within it that you've shaved down through the layers. It stays the same as in if I added a bevel or if I added a curve here, then all of that same pattern that was on the surface layer would remain throughout of that curve, and it can be very pretty. It's definitely cool that this came from the yard and the house that I grew up in. To me, that makes it a little more magical. All these little rounds that I have. I'm sure that tree was at least 50, 60 years old. I believe it was in danger of falling down. But you can always get use out of everything. Honestly, I think that's one of the most beautiful things is when you can reuse something or find a new use for something that would have otherwise been wasted. I think people need to have more of that mindset. I think it would be good for the world. It's fun to me. It requires creativity a lot of the time, and that's fun. Who doesn't like to explore their mind and create what they think and how they feel and what's inside them? microscopically, we're just making the gaps and the scratches smaller and smaller until all the right light bounces off in a certain way, and that's the shininess that you see. That is really sweet.